Did you know some people believe they need to drink blood to survive? Richard Chase believed it. He wasn't a mythical creature, but a man driven by a terrifying delusion. His crimes, committed in the late 1970s, shocked Sacramento and earned him a chilling nickname, the Vampire of Sacramento. Chase's reign of terror began on December 29, 1977. He shot and killed Ambrose Griffin, a 51-year-old engineer, in a seemingly random drive-by shooting. It was a dark foreshadowing of the horrors to come. The police had no leads, no suspects, and no understanding of the darkness that had descended upon their city. January 23, 1978, a seemingly normal day in a quiet Sacramento suburb. Teresa Wallen, 3 months pregnant, was home alone, her husband at work, her 2-year-old son playing in the backyard. It was then that Richard Chase, driven by his twisted compulsions, chose his next victim. Chase entered the house unnoticed. Teresa, caught off guard, fought back against her attacker, but Chase, armed with a .22 caliber pistol, proved too strong. He shot her 3 times, ending her life and the life of her unborn child. The murder, brutal and senseless, sent shockwaves through the community. What could drive a person to commit such heinous acts? Richard Chase's descent into madness had been a slow and disturbing one. From a young age, he exhibited signs of extreme cruelty to animals, a classic red flag in the making of a serial killer. As he grew older, his behavior became increasingly erratic. He developed hypochondria, believing his organs were malfunctioning and his blood was turning to powder. He even resorted to injecting himself with rabbit blood, convinced it would cure his perceived ailments. This marked a chilling turn towards the macabre obsession that would define his crimes. Chase's delusions intensified. What started as a mere whisper in the back of his mind soon grew into a deafening roar that he could no longer ignore. The lines between reality and fantasy blurred, leaving him trapped in a nightmarish world of his own making. He became fixated on the idea that he needed to consume blood to survive. This obsession consumed his every waking moment, driving him to seek out any source of blood he could find. He began to frequent blood donation centers, not to give, but to take. The sight of red liquid became both a comfort and a curse, a symbol of his twisted salvation. This wasn't just a metaphor for him, it was a terrifying reality in his mind. Each drop of blood he consumed seemed to momentarily quell the insatiable hunger gnawing at his soul, but it was never enough. The more he drank, the more he needed, and the deeper he sank into his delusion. He believed that Nazis were poisoning him, turning his blood to powder, and that the only way to replenish it was to drink the blood of others. This bizarre and horrifying belief was rooted in a deep-seated paranoia that had taken hold of his mind. He spent hours poring over medical books and conspiracy theories, convinced that he had uncovered a sinister plot against him. This delusion, fueled by untreated mental illness and possible drug use, pushed him further into darkness. The drugs he took to escape his torment only served to deepen his paranoia and distort his perception of reality. He became a shadow of his former self, lost in a labyrinth of fear and delusion. His need for blood became an insatiable hunger, driving him to commit increasingly gruesome acts. The once gentle man was now a predator, stalking the night in search of his next victim. Each act of violence only served to deepen his madness as he became more and more detached from the reality of his actions. He was no longer content with simply taking a life. He needed to consume the essence of his victims to survive. The blood was not just a means of sustenance, but a way to assert his twisted dominance over his prey. In his mind, he had become a vampire, a creature of the night, forever cursed to wander in search of blood. Just 4 days after killing Teresa Wallen, Chase committed his most horrific crime. He entered the home of Evelyn Myroth, a 38-year-old woman, again seemingly at random. Inside were her friend Danny Meredith, her 6-year-old son Jason, and her 22-month-old nephew David. What followed was a massacre. Chase shot and killed Danny Meredith instantly. He then turned his gun on Evelyn and Jason, killing them both. He abducted baby David, taking the child with him as he fled the blood-soaked scene. The brutality of the crime shook even the most seasoned investigators. Who was this monster who could commit such unspeakable acts? Section 6. Capture and Chaos. The manhunt for Richard Chase intensified. The city of Sacramento was gripped with fear as the police worked around the clock to track down the elusive killer. Every corner of the city was under scrutiny, and the tension was palpable. The police, under immense pressure to catch the killer, worked tirelessly, following every lead, every whisper. They pored over evidence boards, mapped out potential escape routes, and held countless discussions trying to piece together Chase's movements. Their break came when a neighbor of Evelyn Miroth identified Chase's car as the one they had seen speeding away from the crime scene. This crucial tip gave the police the lead they desperately needed. Armed with this crucial piece of information, the police descended upon Chase's apartment. The tension was high as officers prepared for a potentially dangerous confrontation. He attempted to flee, but was quickly apprehended. The swift action of the police ensured that Chase could no longer terrorize the community. Inside his apartment, they discovered a scene straight out of a nightmare. The cluttered space was filled with signs of his horrific activities. Blood stained the walls, the furniture, even the ceiling. The sheer amount of blood was overwhelming, painting a gruesome picture of the violence that had occurred. Body parts were stored in the refrigerator. The officers were horrified by the macabre discovery, which revealed the true extent of Chase's madness. It was a gruesome testament to the depths of his depravity. The evidence collected from the apartment painted a chilling portrait of a man consumed by his dark urges, leaving a scar on the community that would not soon heal. Section 7. Inside the Mind of a Killer. This chapter delves into the chilling and complex psyche of Richard Chase, a man whose heinous acts shocked the world. We explore the courtroom drama that unfolded, the media frenzy that ensued, and the psychological evaluations that sought to understand his mind. Chase's trial was a media sensation. Reporters from all over the country flocked to cover the case, eager to capture every detail of the proceedings. The courthouse steps were constantly swarmed with journalists, their cameras flashing and microphones thrust forward, hoping to get a statement from anyone involved. The public was both horrified and captivated by the details of his crimes. Each revelation in the courtroom sent shockwaves through the audience, leaving them gasping in horror. The intensity of the public's reaction was palpable as they struggled to comprehend the monstrous acts Chase had committed. Psychiatrists for both the defense and the prosecution agreed that Chase was mentally ill, but their opinions on his sanity at the time of the murders differed. The defense's psychiatrists painted a picture of a man lost in a labyrinth of delusions, while the prosecution's experts argued that despite his illness, Chase knew right from wrong. The defense argued that Chase was a paranoid schizophrenic, unable to control his actions or understand the consequences. They presented evidence of his long history of mental illness, including hospitalizations and bizarre behavior, to support their claim that he was not responsible for his actions. They painted a picture of a deeply disturbed individual, lost in a world of delusions and driven by forces beyond his control. The defense's portrayal of Chase was that of a man tormented by his own mind, unable to escape the terrifying hallucinations and paranoid thoughts that plagued him. The prosecution, however, argued that while Chase was undoubtedly mentally ill, he was still aware of the wrongfulness of his actions. They contended that his meticulous planning and attempts to cover up his crimes demonstrated a clear understanding of their illegality. The prosecution sought to prove that Chase's mental illness did not absolve him of responsibility for his heinous acts. Section 8. Justice and Condemnation. The jury ultimately sided with the prosecution. They found Richard Chase guilty of 6 counts of first-degree murder. He was sentenced to death in the gas chamber. The verdict brought a sense of relief, but not closure, to the families of the victims. The trial of Richard Chase raised important questions about mental illness, criminal responsibility, and the justice system. It forced society to confront the uncomfortable reality that sometimes the line between sanity and insanity is blurred and the monsters among us are not always easily identifiable. Section 9. Death Behind Bars. Richard Chase never saw his sentence carried out. On December 26, 1980, he was found dead in his prison cell. He had overdosed on antidepressants, a grim end to a life marked by darkness and depravity. His death, a suicide by his own hand, brought little solace to those whose lives he had shattered. The Vampire of Sacramento was gone, but the scars he left on the community, the families of his victims, and the annals of criminal history remained. His case serves as a chilling reminder of the fragility of the human psyche and the monstrous potential that can lie dormant within.